Okay, so I was on social media today, and some friend pointed out something that I sort of really encapsulated how out there the Australian Labor Party is in relation to Julian Assange. And by the way, the Australian Labor Party could possibly be elected this Saturday as the new government of Australia. And this gives you some idea of how far gone they are in relation to Julian Assange. This is somebody retweeted, Tanya Plibersek. Tanya Plibersek is the opposition deputy leader who could be deputy prime minister next week. And she was retweeting somebody called Neera Tanden, who is really a neoconservative. She pretends to be a liberal, Neera Tanden, but she's actually a neoconservative, a CEO of a think tank, the Center for American Democracy. But anyway, so Neera Tanden, this is what Tanya Plibersek, who could be the Deputy Prime Minister next week, this is what she retweeted on April 11th, 2019. Neera Tanden, I'll show you the tweet. There are many cultists on this site, but the Assange cultists are the worst. Assange was the agent of the proto-fascist state, Russia, to undermine democracy. This is fascist behavior. Anyone on the left should abhor what he did, not celebrate it. Okay, so what did actually Julian Assange do? Julian Assange, who is a journalist publisher, contrary to what Peter Grest, who should be ashamed of himself, said that Julian Assange isn't a journalist, but Julian Assange is a journalist publisher of WikiLeaks, and he hasn't done anything that any journalist does any day of the week. He assisted Chelsea Manning. He allowed Chelsea Manning to leak information to him, to give him information about US war crimes and political corruption. And that is what Chelsea Manning did. That is the collaboration that Chelsea Manning had with Julian Assange. And if you've seen the collateral murder video that was released about a 2007 war crime where an Apache helicopter mowed down a whole bunch of people, including 2 journalists, you know what I mean, which is something that happens every day, by the way. But anyway, so Neera Tanden, I'll give you an idea of Neera Tanden is for the Center she's for the Center for American Progress. It's not Center for American Democracy, but Center for American Progress. She calls herself a progressive. I'll share something that Glenn Greenwald said about this Center for American Progress. Beyond the corporate funders and foreign regimes, the fund Center for American Progress, Neera Tanden, hides many of its largest funders behind a wall of anonymity, refusing to disclose who funds them. So the largest DC Dem think tank is sustained with dark money. Dan Rausikowski said, other large Center for American Progress donors include Embassy of the UAE, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Google, Time Warner, and Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. As of December 2013, its corporate donors include Walmart, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, defense contractor Northrop Grumman, America's health insurance plans, and Eli Lilly & Co. So Neera Tanden is really, even though she claims to be a liberal think tank, she's really just a neoconservative who promotes war. She's promoting war in Venezuela, not as outright, obviously, as the neocons do, but she's been doing that. She is funded by weapons manufacturers and big pharma and the whole shebang. So this is the sort of person who is a warmonger, and she's really down on Julian Assange because when Neera Tanden was helping Hillary Clinton with her campaign, and then the Podesta emails were released by WikiLeaks, which helped expose the incredible corruption of Hillary Clinton. That kind of helped expose her for what she is, a war criminal and a corrupt politician. And so Neera Tanden has an axe to grind with Julian Assange because she's sort of seems to think that it's okay for, that you shouldn't expose, that journalists shouldn't expose political corruption, that journalists shouldn't expose war crimes. That's a big no-no. It seems like all these politicians, including Tanya Plibersek and Bill Shorten and all these other people, have forgotten what journalism actually is. They're okay with journalism as long as it supports the government narrative. When they get into office, they want journalists who will support their government. They don't want people like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks exposing possibly even their political corruption one day. So all these cowardly politicians, and I'm not even going to get into the other side, the Scott Morrison government, who hopefully will end up being voted out this Saturday. Not that Bill Shorten's government's going to be much better. They'll probably just be, as the juice media says in Australia, shit light. There's the shit party and the shit light party. And I'm going to show you something they did about Julian Assange, the juice media. They're probably the only fourth estate we have left in Australia, and they happen to be a satirical group. So doesn't that say something? I mean, otherwise we just have the Murdoch press. So it seems like Tanya Plibersek gets her information about the world, including the whole Russiagate thing. She swallowed the Russiagate narrative that Trump is some sort of Manchurian candidate and that Russia controls everything, including has collaborated with Assange and all. Forgetting that, of course, that WikiLeaks has actually has actually put out a whole lot of files about Russia too. But I mean, this is this dreadful trap that the liberal media, the so-called liberal media in the United States, they've just been promoting this Russiagate narrative for 2 years because they're so desperate to get Trump out, even though they're totally fine when Trump is wanting to have a war with this country and that country. They applaud that, but he's not classy enough for them. They want to have, somebody like Obama that people don't notice what he's doing because he's too busy being suave and groovy on Ellen DeGeneres' show and dancing and all of this. Meanwhile, he's got a kill list on Tuesday that he drones people in wedding parties and funerals. They want somebody like that, someone who is like a full-on war monger, but does it in a classy way. They don't want people like Trump, even though Trump's doing a very good job with warmongering. But anyway, so this is Neera Tanden. This is who Tanya Plibersek, who's possibly going to be the Deputy Prime Minister next week. She's retweeting that kind of garbage. And I heard a little interview she did on the day after she retweeted this, when a sort of what appears to be a pro-establishment, just an establishment stenographer, radio guy, asked her, what is she going to do about Assange? And she said, the usual nonsense that they all say, well, he can get all the consulate help he needs. Yes, well, that worked out well the last 7 years. They didn't bother with him. And then he sort of asked about the rape allegations, which, by the way, have been reintroduced. And I'm going to play a little bit of, they've been revived once again to see if they can screw him over, even though the two women had actually dropped the charges and said they were pushed into it by the police. And I'll show you something John Pilger just, he tweeted about that. And then I'll play you Kristen Harafson's thoughts about the recent revival of these rape allegations, which is really just politically motivated and is a way of getting Assange out of England, out of the UK before Jeremy Corbyn gets in, because Jeremy Corbyn's likely to release Assange. So they have to get him out of the country, and the best way is to send him to Sweden, because Sweden is just a US lackey, like Australia is, and so they're likely to help the US extradite Assange to a definite fate of solitary confinement for 45 years, probably torture, and even possibly execution. So that's what that is, this revival, once again, of this Swedish rape thing. Anyway, it seems like Tanya Plibersek, all she could talk about in this interview with this fellow was about the rape charges. And it seems like she has tried him in her own public court of opinion. And that was all she could see, it was just smearing him, basically. So she smeared him in this interview, and the interviewer also smeared him. And honestly, these people, I have contempt for these politicians, the way they have treated this man. They wouldn't know journalism if it bit them. They wouldn't know what press freedom is and how important this is, that he is not extradited to the United States, that this sets a precedent for any journalist. And by the way, there's another whistleblower who made connections with The Intercept, David Hale. He's been arrested. And it would be good if you checked out Minpress News, the article. I'll leave in the comment section about that, because it seems like the Intercept may have somebody dodgy there who is it ends up that these whistleblowers are getting arrested. But the thing I was going to say is that Jeremy Scahill, he was the journalist who this source, Daniel Hale, went to. And, you know, if the US wanted to, they could prosecute Jeremy Scahill, because just like Julian Assange, just like they do every day, journalists, there's whistleblowers that come to them, and that's what happens every day. This is journalism. And so Jeremy Scahill could become another Julian Assange. I doubt he will, because he has the owner of PayPal is actually running the Intercept, and you know, I don't know what's going on there. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but I don't think that he is. I don't think Jeremy Scahill is going to go have trouble like Julian Assange has had. But this is the US government, if they're set a precedent for arresting Julian Assange and extraditing him and putting him in prison and throwing away the key, or worse, if they can do that to Jeremy Scahill. They can do that to anybody. And this is why, unfortunately, clueless politicians like Tanya Plibersek don't realize, or they're willfully ignorant about the press freedom issue that is here about Julian Assange. And if she actually looked into any sort of independent news whatsoever, instead of just obviously following rabid Russiagators like Neera Tanden, for goodness sake, if she did any research into that woman, she's very hateful and just a neoconservative, really. She's not a liberal at all. She's full-on a warmonger, and she hates Julian Assange. She has an axe to grind. If Tanya Plibersek actually did any research, she would realize that these rape allegations are just being dragged up to get him over to Sweden to extradite him to the US, in his alias. You know, she just wants, you know, that's what that's about. And if she did any research at all, she would realize that Julian Assange has done a great service to the world with the exposing of war crimes that happen every day in Iraq and elsewhere. And if we weren't such a US lackey here in Australia, we would be pushing against this the dreadful wars that are happening. Obama expanded 2 wars to 7. Now we have 8 wars, and Australia is being involved in them. And this is the other thing. If these people weren't such US lackeys like the Australian Labor Party, they wouldn't have endorsed Juan Guaido. Juan Guaido invited the US into Venezuela to militarily invade Venezuela. This is traitorous behavior. He's self-appointed. He's self-elected. It's a non-government. And this is what the Australian Labor Party is supporting, Juan Guaido, who has invited a military coup in his own country, and the US, through these crippling economic sanctions since 2017, have killed 40,000 Venezuelans with their crippling economic sanctions. And this is our ally, the US, who has killed 40,000 Venezuelans, collective punishment, through these US crippling sanctions. And this is the Guaido is part of that. If these people, if the Guaido supporters were so concerned about Venezuela, they would care about these 40,000 dead Venezuelans, but they don't. They're usually light-skinned, wealthy Venezuelans who want to see Venezuela privatized. They want to see the Bolivarian revolution crushed, and they want the US in so that they can continue on and they can make profit. They don't care about the black Venezuelans, and there are a lot of black Venezuelans. This is a class issue that's going on here in Venezuela. If Tanya Plibersek wasn't so busy being a US lackey, and I include Bill Shorten in that, and anybody in the Labor Party, even Anthony Albanese, what has he been saying? Nothing about Assange, nothing about Venezuela. And he's supposed to be the left part of the Australian Labor Party. Please. They're a disgrace. The Australian Labor Party. Gough Whitlam would be disgusted. You're disgusting, all of you, supporting Guaido and supporting the US, which has actually killed 40,000 Venezuelans. And they are invading. They've been trying to invade the Venezuelan embassy in Washington. That is against Article 22 of the Vienna Convention. The Venezuelan embassy is a sovereign part of Venezuela. It's a sovereign thing, and it's against international law. And the Secret Service and the police have been trying to kick out the Venezuelan Embassy Protection Collective, who were invited in by the Venezuelan government to look after the embassy. And here is the United States government trying to kick them out. They've turned off the power. They've turned off the water. There's only four Venezuelan Embassy Collective people left in that embassy because they say they're not going to leave until they're forced to leave. And this is the US that we are allies with, going against international law again and again, and now they're trying to start a war with Iran. Rattling sabers, they pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, and then when the Iran government decides to pull out of that nuclear deal because they think, what's the point? The US has pulled out of it, and they're still crippling sanctions on Iran, so we'll pull out of it too. Then the US points the finger and says, see, now we're going to, you've done something wrong. This is what the US government does over and over again. It's time for Australians to wake up and stop. This has to stop. Our country has to stop supporting this rogue empire that is trying to start wars left and right. It's trying to invade Venezuela for oil, just like it did with Iraq in 2003. It's trying to invade Iran. Iran is the fourth largest oil producer, and it hasn't submitted to the US. They tried to overthrow them in 1953, and it was successful, and then they ousted the Shah and got their country back, and the US has never forgiven them, and they've been vilifying them ever since. They're trying to start wars left and right. They're vilifying Russia and China because Russia and China are economic powers, and they see that as a threat. Capitalism is okay for the US as long as nobody is interfering with them. As the US says, they're quite happy to overlook human rights abuses if it's in American interest. They've literally said that. So, I don't know. I'm totally disgusted with the Australian Labor Party. There is no anti-war movement to speak of in Australia, and there needs to be, desperately. And I'm disgusted with Tanya Plibersek. She's supposed to be the left part of the Australian Labor Party, please. Here she is following a neoconservative, rabid Russiagator, pushing this ridiculous Putin nonsense, that Putin controls the world, that Putin's interfering in everything. The US is interfering in everything. Have a look at the 50-plus countries, some say 81 countries, that they've either attempted to overthrow or have overthrown since 1946. Have a look. Who is the biggest meddler in the world? Who's the greatest threat to world peace in the world? It's the US empire. And I say an empire because it has 800-plus bases worldwide, and that's just the ones we know about. Why on earth are we continuing to be allies with this dangerous rogue empire that wants to invade countries left and right and is almost starting a hot war with Russia, which would be mutually assured destruction? Anyway, Julian Assange is going to have as little hope as he had with the Scott Morrison government as he'll have with the Bill Shorten government if he gets in this Saturday. Because it's obvious that these people are either willfully ignorant about what Julian Assange has done, they're willfully ignorant about press freedom and what this means for press freedom if he's extradited to the US, they're willfully ignorant, or they're absolutely stupid, one of the two. Either way, it's not great. And yet, these people might be governing Australia next week. Charming. Anyway, please subscribe if you haven't already and hit the notifications bell. Please stick around for this next segment. I'm going to show you Juice Media's. Juice Media is a satirical Australian group, and there's only a husband and wife, I think, and a couple of friends do that. And they're probably the only fourth estate we have left in Australia. And then I'll show you Kristen Harafson's thoughts about the rape allegations that have once again surfaced that are politicised against Julian Assange. So thanks so much for watching. My name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time. Bye for now.
Hello, I am from the British government with a fabulous announcement. No, I'm sorry, we still haven't sorted out this bleeding shit show, but we have finally managed to arrest our most wanted criminal. No, the other one, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Once we're done, we'll extradite his skippy ass off to Virginia to face a grand jury, because we're America's bitch. Yeah, baby. We'd like to thank all who aided us in this operation, especially the Ecuadorian government.
Hola, I'm from the Ecuadorian government, and I'm here to confirm that our new president is America's bitch too. That is why he agreed to cancel Harry Hacker's political asylum and let pigs enter our embassy to arrest him. ¿Será que nos pueden dar nuestro crédito el FMI ahora, por favor?
Hello, I'm from the Australian government. Since Mr. Assange is our citizen, we feel compelled to state in the strongest possible terms that we're America's bitch too. That's why both of these bung stains will leave him up shit creek without a paddle. After all, we're the same dickholes who are prosecuting whistleblowers and banning encryption to make it harder for journalists to expose our shitfuckery. Hello, I'm from the US government. We're grateful to all our bitches for handing over Julian Assange, who is wanted on charges of making us look like war criminals. Which of course we are. We have indicted the accused for the crime of helping his source to anonymously access documents in the public interest, otherwise known as good journalism. Journalists, of course, are not supposed to be good. They're meant to be piss-weak on questioning stenographers who publish what we tolerate. By extraditing a foreign journalist, we hope to send a clear warning to all journalists not to mess with our shit. We ask all of you to cooperate with us in setting this dangerous precedent by focusing on how the accused is a bit of an asshole instead of our attempt to destroy your press freedom. American Empire. Authorized by the United Bitches of America.
Now, how unexpected was this decision for Julian, and what does it mean for his case right now?
Well, I have gotten accustomed not to be surprised by any event when it comes to Julian Assange and his case. And this was something that we were bracing us for. It is the third prosecutor who now is handling the case, the preliminary investigation into an allegation. Julian Assange has always been ready and willing to cooperate with the Swedish investigation throughout the years, and I assume that he will welcome this opportunity to clear his name and get this matter over and done with.
And what are these grounds for the allegations? Do you know if any evidence has been provided by the authorities?
Well, it so happens that, which is very unusual in the case of Sweden and most other countries, that documents pertaining to the investigation have been leaked out from the Swedish police or the prosecutor's office. So it's readily available to people online. So everybody can basically take a look and come to some conclusion whether it's fair to categorize and use the word rape in what is described there. We know from text messages that have came from the women involved that they were railroaded by the police, according to their own words, that they never wanted this to go this far. There are many abnormalities in this highly politicized process which pertain to Julian's position worldwide. The Crown Prosecution Service in the UK was in the driver's seat in this case, it seems, according to emails that were obtained through Freedom of Information requests. Emails that were deleted on the UK side, but were obtained from Sweden. They show that Sweden wanted to close this case as early as 2013. The case was closed in 2010 originally, and again in 2017, and now a third attempt is being made.
So does that make it, in your opinion, that it's possible that there was a lot of political pressure on Sweden to pursue this case?
Of course there is political pressure. It's obvious, and it has surfaced. We've seen that in the media. Everything that pertains to Julian Assange these days is politicized, highly politicized. The handling of the affair by the Swedish authorities have been highly criticized by the United Nations committee. And It is very hard to see that he has an opportunity to a fair trial in Sweden, in the UK, or in the United States, especially because that is exactly what this all pertains to. An onward extradition to the United States to face trial for publishing the truth.
Do you think that it's possible that Assange will actually be extradited to Sweden?
Well, as we heard from the press conference earlier this morning, it is up to the United Kingdom to decide whether they extradite him to the United States or to Sweden. So the UK authorities are involved. The Swedish prosecutor also said it will be the matter for the United Kingdom authorities to decide whether he will be onwardly extradited from Sweden to the United States, which probably means in current political atmosphere basically a rubber stamp. We are fighting here, in the end, an indictment and a prosecution before a secret jury in the United States for publishing truthful information. That's the heart of the matter.
If it does come down to what the UK authorities decide is best, how likely do you think, which case will they prioritize?
I have no idea what they will decide, but let me be absolutely clear about this. It will be a political decision, first and foremost. Justice is long gone from anything when it comes to Julian Assange. He has no justice at all.
We all know that Assange went and sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy because he feared extradition to Sweden meant extradition to the U.S. in the end. If Stockholm gets him first, how likely is he to end up getting into Washington's hands later on?
Well, I was referring to the words of the Swedish prosecutor, who basically said that it was the UK authorities would have to consent to it. Let's not forget that Sweden doesn't have a totally good history when it comes to cooperation with the U.S. authorities. The most disgraceful rendition, for example, happened out of Stockholm, where a refugee was thrown into the hands of the CIA and onto a rendition plane and flown to Egypt, where he faced torture. So anything can happen.